Hello again. First and foremost, I would like to thank you for being an In Plain View podcast listener. I wanted to go ahead and create a follow-up video. A few days ago, I went ahead and as soon as the DraftKings NFL Week 1 salaries were posted for the main slate, before I did any of my homework for the week or for the 2019 season, for the first week, I was so stoked. I just kind of clicked record and I went through everything. And because of that, now that I've been digging into things a little more, there are some things that I would like to substantiate here in a follow-up video, and there are some things I'm already changing my tune to, which is pretty much expected when you create a video on a whim. So let's go ahead and get right into it. One of the themes of my first video was the importance of using heavy game stacks at the start of the season. So there is something I do quickly want to show. And what I did is I basically created a chart here. It's showing the average production per game per week using yards. So on the x-axis, we have weeks 1 through 17, and then we have the yards per game. I included a trend line here. You can clearly see that it's a downtrend as the season goes. As I hypothesized based on my first video, this is because of injuries. People figure out the different plays, the playbooks of other teams, and there's really less variance as the season goes on. Although this does support some of the things I was saying, there probably could have been a better way to show this, but I did want to release something as soon as possible, and that's the fact that the standard deviation at the start of the season is also going to be much higher. So you have more yards, but you also have more lopsided games, more opportunities to exploit if you're doing a large-scale GPP. So this is the first thing I wanted to look at. As I mentioned, my approach for week 1 is going to be utilizing heavy game stacks. And if you look at the first couple of weeks, and this is what I hinted towards in the last video, of the 2018 season, you can see that Vegas is pretty accurate when they're looking at high over-unders, at least in terms of which teams are going to have huge games and there's going to be a lot of points scored. And that definitely seems to be correlated with daily fantasy production. So I have a couple of examples for weeks 1 through 3 of the 2018 season, and I'd like to go ahead and share them. So let's go to week 1 here. Using Fantasy Labs, I don't know if you are a listener of Adam Levitan or Adam Schmiz. Al Zeidenfeld, excuse me. It's been a little while since last season, okay? I'm still getting the hang of things. You'll know of Fantasy Labs. It's a great site, but it's a little expensive. I don't necessarily have a premium subscription, but you can still use that site to go ahead and look at NFL lines. So this is what I gathered here. This is week 1 of the 2018 season. This doesn't have every game, but if it's circled, it's relevant to the example, and it's also the top first or second over-under predicted by Vegas for the week. Okay, so I briefly hinted towards the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints for the week 1 game. And as you can see here, this is just a sample of all the games, but I can assure you that this is the highest over-under, whether it's open or the closing line. And you can see here, it opened at 51.5. It eventually closed to 50, but this is still very high. Once you see a game in the 50s, you know it could have plenty of fantasy goodness. And just to kind of reiterate my point for this video and from the last video, if you were to go ahead and look at the winning Millie Maker lineup, this is what you're going to find. Here it is. Some lucky fella won $1 million in week 1 of 2018 season. And you can see a heavy game stack here. He has Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. He stacked Ryan Fitzpatrick with Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson. And then on the opposing team, he stacked Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. So you can see here there is a quarterback, running back, and 3 pass catcher game stack, and you can just look at the points here. This lineup broke 300 points. That is not an easy thing to do. I've hit, I've hit in the 230s, the 240s, but to put together a lineup with 300 points, that is quite an achievement. And I think one of the prerequisites of doing something like that, aside from a totally random lottery lineup, is utilizing a heavy game stack, a stack that Vegas thinks is going to produce. You have a lineup generator. You set the theme. You want X amount of players from this game, and whichever combination you feel is going to produce. In my opinion, I really like quarterback, running back, 3 pass catchers. However, I'm not. It's not exclusive. I will vary it up, but I do want to go heavy on a combination like that for the 2019 season, and just to see how it goes. And there you have it. So week 1 kind of supports what I've been preaching here, and I'm a believer of it. So if we go to week 2, again, I don't have all of the games. They wouldn't fit in my screenshot. But week 2, we have Kansas City against the Steelers. This was the highest line, I believe, for over-under. Whether or not it's the highest line, it's 52 points. I mean, that's good enough. If you have a line over 50 points, you want to pay attention to the game. So this closed at 52 points. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. You've got a team that is an offensive juggernaut. And then you have the Steelers, who also are offensive juggernauts. They're going to be able to answer back to all the points that Mahomes is throwing and everything that the offense is doing. So you're planning for week 2. You're trying to figure out your lineups. You see Vegas has 52 points for this game. You say, okay, I think this game is going to be very high scoring, and they're going to be answering back to each other. Therefore, it's going to be synergistic to have an abundance of players relative to the 9 spots in the roster in this game. So if you look at the second week Millie Maker lineup, this is what you're going to find. Once again, in a slightly different combination in regards to which position on which team, we have a quarterback, a running back, and 3 pass catchers, a game stack. So we have Mahomes at quarterback, we have Kareem Hunt at running back, and then we also have Watkins and Kelsey. And then on the other side of the ball, we have a Juju Smith-Schuster stack. So heavy game stack here, scored 237 points. And once again, someone made $1 million. Lucky them, good for them. It's good stuff. I'm very excited based on some of these findings to go ahead and move forward into the 2019 season. And one more example, if we go to week 3, the Saints versus the Falcons, they closed with an over-under of 54 points. That is a very high-scoring game. As you're approaching week 3, you're going to want to flag this game as one that you might want to do a heavy game stack with. And if you look at this lineup here, this didn't win the Millie Maker, but this was one of the highest-scoring lineups. This lineup did win at least a couple 100,000. I don't remember the exact tournament. It's 253 points, nearly 254 points. We have Drew Brees at quarterback, Alvin Kamara, Ben Watson, and Michael Thomas. And then they're answering back with Calvin Ridley. So again, we have a quarterback, running back, and 1, 2, 3 pass catchers from this game. And it's an incredible output. This is a great lineup. So this just kind of reinforces some of the things that I've been saying. I do really believe in this, and with game theory incorporated into your strategy here, I don't think a novice player thinks it's possible to have such a high scoring lineup with so many players from the same game. It almost seems counterintuitive, like to have so many players from the same game, they might cannibalize on each other's points. But when it's a total shootout, it's actually the opposite. and great things happen. So just something I wanted to make you aware of. Moving forward into the 2019 season, there is something I want to look at. And basically, I was able to find some information from the 2018 season. I was trying to figure out ways to predict a shootout, basically. I had run some regressions. I'm also going to make a video on that in Excel. But I wasn't able to find good coefficients. That's something I'm still working on. But what I did find was yards per drive. So I took that information. I adjusted it based on the time of possession. So basically, the quicker they were able to accumulate X amount of yards per drive, the better. So this is an adjusted metric. And you can see here, based on the 2018 season, there's a correlation with the opening lines for these games for week 1. The highest here is the Rams at Carolina. Then we have 689. We have Tampa Bay and San Fran. 661. It's Indy and the Chargers. 647. Atlanta, Minnesota, and then 630. KC and Jacksonville. Indy and Chargers. There's definitely some players from this game that I'm going to be looking at and I'm going to be incorporating into my lineups. But with the Chargers defense, there's just something about this game. I don't want 3, 4, 5 players in the same lineup from this game. Maybe that will change. Something else I want to note for Atlanta, Minnesota, I've been putting together the enhanced CSV for the week 1 salaries that I want to distribute to the listeners. And I've basically been deriving probabilities for each player on historically looking at the 2018 season. What's the percent chance they're going to hit 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times value? And I'll tell you that Matt Ryan really stands out. I think he's at 6,100 for week 1, and he routinely hit 5 times value. So I think that's going to be a good pick. Based on some of this information, you can also see that these lines are the highest lines for week 1 from Vegas. We have 48.5 for Arizona, Detroit, but I got to look into that one a little more. I don't know about that. I know Arizona's defense isn't the best. I know their offensive line was awful last year. So I can provide an update on this game. I don't know much about it yet. But we've been talking about heavy game stacks for the start of the season, especially in week 1. These are the 3 games that I'm really interested in. We have the Rams at Carolina. Carolina with Christian McCaffrey, they're a great team. Cam Newton, he looks really good in camp, and the practices, if you go on social media, you see some of the things he's doing. The Rams are the Rams. Sean McVay is Sean McVay. They are a great team despite the Super Bowl, which wasn't very exciting. Tampa Bay and San Fran, I really already discussed that in the first video. I really like this game. And then KC and Jacksonville, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Their offense is electric. And then I would upgrade Jacksonville with Nick Foles at quarterback. So I really like this as well. I think Kansas City is going to be scoring. Nick Foles is going to be able to answer back, and this is going to be a good recipe for a shootout. Not to mention, it's currently the highest over-under for the main slate. So these are the 3 games that I'm really interested in. Please continue to follow along as I do more analyses and gain more insight. I am happy to share it. And again, thank you for listening. Please tune in again.